The fact that they're carrying machetes doesn't necessarily make them legitimate military targets.
5-star reasoning? Hi, I'm Jasper, and I'm here with Taylor Woodcock, who is a researcher at the Astor Institute, and her research focuses on the military applications of AI, specifically the legal issues of the military applications of AI. And we're going to be seeing today how ChatGPT deals with the type of complex legal issues that you tackle in your research.
I'm really curious to see what it comes out with when we pose some of the complex legal issues that we've been dealing with. But when it comes to actually engaging in legal analysis and presenting some answers to these questions, I have...
You have doubts?
I have some doubts, yes.
Here we go.
One of the most contentious issues of the use of AI
is autonomous weapon systems. Oh.
Referred to as killer robots.
I was going to introduce Taylor as someone who works, researching this, and she said,
no killer robots.
What's the danger with using the term killer robots?
There's a lot of AI hype, but there's also a lot of scaremongering, and this can detract from the real issues. So for us, it's better to stick to more specific applications.
All right. Okay.
Oh, it's still going. It did mention international humanitarian law. So this is one of the main legal frameworks, but of course it's not the only legal frameworks. We also have international human rights law, which is equally as applicable in armed conflict. We also have specific frameworks for accountability. Now, it mentioned criminal responsibility, but in international law, we also have state responsibility.
I think we should put the scenario to it and see what it does.
Yeah, I'm really curious, actually.
State Alpha is fighting armed group Beta, which is under the effective control of another state, in a foreign territory. Alpha operates a military base near the front line, in the said foreign territory, guarded by a CIWS, a point defense weapon system for detecting and destroying short-range incoming missiles and enemy aircraft, capable of intercepting both material and human incoming threats. The CIWS is programmed to identify threats based on whether they are carrying a weapon, or within a defined perimeter of the base and exhibit indicators of hostile intent, such as failing to heed warnings or avoiding roads, and is programmed to exclude friendly forces, such as those wearing Allied uniforms. One evening, Beta attacks a village located a few kilometers from the base. Many civilians flee from the village and carry machetes for protection against Beta fighters pursuing them. As these civilians approach the base after dark through the fields, the CIWS identifies them as a potential target. An Alpha commander orders the initiation of perimeter defense protocols, including lights and audio warnings. The fleeing villagers do not heed the warnings and continue to proceed towards the base. What would you do in this situation? How would you evaluate whether lethal force is warranted? Who would be responsible? The commander? What about the Alpha state?
Alright, so here we go.
Alright, let's see what it does with the scenario. This was produced by my colleague Magda Pachelska. I'm curious to see what ChatGPT does too.
I'm afraid it's gonna not even answer it. Oh, as an AI model. Yeah.
I don't have personal experiences, but I can suggest a potential course of action based on the principles of international humanitarian law. It's interesting that it mentioned it doesn't have personal experiences. So distinction, the fact that they're carrying machetes doesn't necessarily make them legitimate military targets.
Pretty good logic.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
But if there's doubt to their status, you should presume they're civilians. And that's a good starting point, but I think when it comes to determining hostile intent, you need to go a little bit further with the legal analysis to determine whether the civilians could be directly participating in hostilities or not. It's unclear how autonomous weapons could reliably distinguish between combatants and non-combatants, particularly in complex urban environments or in situations where combatants are mixed with civilian populations.
Yeah. I remember there was a AI to recognize stuff, and then they eventually got around it by just sticking the word apple on things, and then it would just call it an apple. So I guess that would be a problem as well when you can't.
Yeah, there are certainly risks of adversarial attacks. I know that in some research that was done, they managed to get a classifier system to classify a 3D printed turtle as a rifle, which is a pretty big mistake. So let's give it the first variant, and then we can discuss its conclusions a little bit more, because there's a major issue, I think, that's at stake here that I think it's not really dealing with.
The Alpha commander requests optical confirmation of potential threats from human sentries, who confirm the hostile intent of the approaching group. The commander thus relies on the CIWS's suggestion.
If the commander does this, in this situation, are they acting in line with international humanitarian law? According to this, meaningful human control can be exercised through using these sort of systems to support decisions rather than make them. Often the issue of decision support is not even raised, and we're really just focusing on autonomous weapon systems. The big issue that my colleague Magda points to is that actually this isn't necessarily a tech issue, but it's an IHL issue, because what GPT hasn't picked up on is what happens when we make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, often it's not treated as a violation of IHL. And if we have an IHL framework that doesn't treat mistakes as a violation, then how do we deal with that if mistakes become more common through the use of autonomous technologies?
There's a bunch of accidents already happening with people. So there's lots of mistakes already in driving with humans. But the tolerance for mistakes for autonomous vehicles is much lower.
And especially if you think about autonomous cars, when these cars are designed, they really have to think through crash scenarios and what does the car do in a crash scenario, and whether it steers towards a pedestrian or away from a pedestrian in order to save the driver. And those decisions are already being thought about at an earlier stage. So it's interesting to think about, okay, well, what does that mean in a war context when you're thinking about how does the system react when something goes wrong?
What if it is a fully autonomous CIWS, which does not require separate confirmation engagement that fires at the villagers? Are they acting in line with IHL?
This is treating the AWS as if they are military personnel, which is not really the case. ChatGPT asking whether a system itself can fulfill distinction, proportionality, and precautions under IHL, but it's not really capturing that this is the responsibility of humans, and that responsibility might shift to an earlier moment, and then we have to ask whether the use of these systems puts those human commanders in a position to fulfill their obligations. I think we should ask it to imagine that it's wanting to do a PhD project, and so we need it to formulate an innovative research question for a PhD proposal on military applications of AI and international law.
Challenges. That's a little broad.
It's extremely broad. I mean, isn't that the question on everyone's mind?
What would your PhD supervisor say if you came with such a broad question?
This is the advice that PhDs always get. Narrow, narrow, narrow.
It's going to give us a definition again.
Yeah. It's basically like a trumped up dictionary right now.
Yeah.
And I think this really shows that law is not just rules that are written in a book, but it's something we have to interpret and apply. And even though GPT here is able to retrieve information, it's not actually able to interpret and apply and form its own legal arguments. Superficial, but still potentially helpful, but not really able to grapple with the complex legal side.
You're not fearing for your job?
No, I'm not. I feel quite safe. The ChatGPT can't write my PhD. What we've done in the DILEMA project is create this document to identify some issues that require further clarification so that we can really push debates forward, not limited to autonomous weapons, but also military applications of AI more broadly, and trying to really get to the heart of the legal issues and understanding, it's not that just we need control of over these systems, but also looking at how can humans really effectively exercise agency when these systems are used.